Hello and welcome to Maya with Haste. George here, and in this video we're going to take a very brief look at materials. We need to set up our own materials for different objects if we're going to learn how to UV unwrap, which is going to be the next video, and of course then apply a texture to that object, which will be the following video. So first what we should do is actually create some objects in our scene that we're going to use. So let's create a sphere real quick, and maybe a cube. Move it off. Now while you can access materials in this view, it's easier for us to go to Window, Material, Texture Baking Editors, and then the Hypershade. Now the Hypershade is very complicated. We're not going to cover all of its features here. The most important thing for you to realize is that we have a work area right here called Untitled 1, and this is where we actually build and construct our materials. Up here we have a series of tabs showing you all of your materials in the scene, textures, lights, and so forth. And on this side pane over here, the right side, we have the ability to, well, if we double click one of these materials, see all the material information and edit it through a series of sliders. I just double click this material, and if we come back into Maya, you'll also notice that my attribute editor is open, and I can modify those values over here as well. Although in many ways it's more convenient to have all of the material information right here in your Hypershade for easy access. You'll notice we already have a material in our scene. This is Fong 1. Fong 1 is important. Fong 1 is the default material applied to all objects in our scene. So if we were to modify this Fong material, you'll notice all objects are modified. They're all having their color changed. So it's very important for us to make sure we create new materials and attach them to objects. We can create them in a couple different ways. One way is we can just click on one of these particular types of objects we want. Now, not all of these are materials. Some of them are nodes that assist you in building materials. So Fong, for instance, well, that is a material. And we have the really important part, which is our Fong node right here, the actual material we modify and mess around with. You'll also notice we have a new material up here called Fong 2. It's a horrible name, so I recommend you change it to something else. Let's just call this sphere underscore M. The underscore M is just so that we can differentiate between this being a material and not an object in our scene. So for instance, if I go to my sphere really quickly and we change its name, let's just call this one sphere underscore M as well. You'll notice I can't use that name. It gets a 1 appended to the end. The nodes in Maya all have, well, they all share the same namespace, so to speak, meaning if I have a material called sphere, I can't have an object called sphere. Okay, you need to differentiate them inside of Maya. So let's apply this material, this different sphere M, to the sphere. One way of doing it is to middle mouse click on the object and just drag it over the other material. And you'll notice instantly we had a slight change in its color. We double click on this material, sphere M, and we change it. We can of course see that it is changing, whereas the cube is not. The cube does not have this material assigned to it. Now another way you could create materials very rapidly, let's say we want the cube to have its own material. Right click and then go to Assign New Material. This will bring up the Assign New Material window, which is sort of like a concise version of the Hypershade. We can click on Fong, and now we have a new Fong object created right there. If we bring up our Hypershade, you'll notice we now have this new Fong node over here that we can modify. And of course, when we do create new materials, that material is automatically loaded into the attribute editor so we can play around with it. We saw we can modify the color, and there are many other settings such as transparency, which is very nice when you're actually in the editor mode and maybe you need to make an object more transparent to see through it, or perhaps the ambient color to make it brighter. But what I really wanted to take a minute to talk about and get you rolling with is the color option, and not specifically color, but this little checkered box on the side. If you click on this, you'll get a new window. You'll get a new Create Shading Node window. And in here, there's lots of options. Things like checker, ramp, substance, cloud, crater. These are all procedurally generated textures, which means Maya is, well, generating them on the fly. It's not an image. You can actually go in here and modify these parameters. You can always bake these procedural ones out, and we'll probably cover that in a future video. But for the very basics today, we only want to work with the file type. As soon as you click on File, the attribute editor changes, and we have these two tabs, one called File and one called Place 2D Texture 1. The Place 2D Texture 1 node is about, well, kind of very similar to how an object has transforms for rotate, translate, and scale. What you really want to know, though, is how to add a file to this object, or how to use a texture to colorize the surface. So let's click on Image Name really quick. And I actually don't have an example. I've been lazy, so let's just try to find something really quick. Let's go to my desktop. So here I found an image of a project I had done in the past. So let's load that up really quick. And what you'll notice is now we have this image assigned to the object. Now you're probably wondering why this image is, well, tiling this way, or it's displayed this way on the box. You probably expected maybe the image to show up on each side. But in this case, it looks like each face is randomly sampling different parts of it. This has to do with our next topic that we'll cover in the following video, and that's UV coordinates, or setting up for each vertex we have here where they sample information in the image we've brought in. Hope you enjoyed this real quick and simple video on materials. In the next one, we're going to jump into UV coordinates and how to manipulate them so we can get something that we actually want on this box that you see right here. Thanks again. Hope you enjoyed. Remember to like and subscribe. So long.